Nice jingle, right?
I'm like,
That's all right.
bopping to it.
It's U.S. mainstream. It's
Norman Rockwellish.
You're listening to Peachtree Corners Live with Rico and Rita, the weekly internet radio show keeping you current on the interests of the people, places, and politics in the city of Peachtree Corners. Be inspired, stay current, and be informed. Visit our website, peachtreecornerslife.com, for ways to listen to our broadcast live every week or download our podcast from iTunes.
Hey everyone, you're here with me, Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life. We are doing a Facebook Live tonight, and you can also watch the Facebook Live anytime that we go live. If you like our page on Facebook, just go search for Peachtree Corners Life, and you'll get notified when we do these live, which isn't just Thursday night at 8:30, but it's also on a Thursday at noon, when we're doing other types of shows. So one of the other shows is the Ed Hour, and the other one is Prime Lunchtime with the city manager. But tonight, we have another political guest, a candidate for Gwinnett Superior Court Judge, Wesley Person.
Oh,
thank you, Wesley.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you
here.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
We've been doing these candidate interviews, 1 hour interviews over the last couple of months now for a variety of people. And, and I've, even with court judge candidates, although you can't specifically talk about specific issues, it's an interesting conversation just to find out about who you are, how you see things, your philosophy, and, where you've come from.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, where you were born, raised, and how you came to Gwinnett County?
Well, I was born and raised in Norfolk, Virginia, in a section of Norfolk called Berkeley. I was raised by my dad, Wesley Person. He had a nickname around the neighborhood called Powerhouse. So whenever people saw me walking around the neighborhood, they would say, "Hey, little Powerhouse." So he never explained to me the origin of the name. I never really got a clear understanding, but I just knew I was a little powerhouse. Okay. I went to school I was educated at Lake Taylor High School, graduated in 1982, and wound up, took me a while to get my undergraduate degree. I wound up graduating from Wayne State University in 2000, and then I went down to Macon at Mercer Law School, and I graduated from the Walter F. George School of Law in 2003, and started my legal career as a prosecutor in the Griffin Judicial Circuit, and that circuit consists of 4 counties, because when you get outside of Atlanta, the large metro areas, the judicial circuits become multiple counties just to make up the numbers, and it's more cost effective.
Sure.
So I was in the Griffin Judicial Circuit, and that consists of Pike County, Upson County, Spalding County, and Fayette County. And I was there for about 2.5 years, worked with a DA named William T. McBroom. And when he lost re-election to a gentleman named Scott Ballard, I went out into private practice, and I've been in private practice since about 2005. Moved here in Gwinnett County in around 2008, and I've been here in Gwinnett County practicing criminal defense, family law, pretty much anything. I'm what they call a general practitioner. Whatever walks in the door, I will represent them. So,
really?
Yes. But, yeah. Some things I won't, but yeah. Pretty much the theory is if they have the money, you'll represent them. But some cases I just go, that's not me. Okay. So, yeah.
All right. So you've come to be able to want to run for Gwinnett County Superior Court Judge.
Yes.
And so, I think this is, whose seat was this? This was originally...
Judge Deborah Turner, Division 2. Yes.
Right. And there are 2 candidates running, so just to be fair.
Yes.
So one of them is B.T. Parker, and then the other one's Tracy Kaysen, who we had on a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And yourself.
And myself.
Right. So, tell us a little bit about, where you see your philosophy as a prosecutor. We were talking a little bit about it before, so give me a better idea of what you think about.
my idea, I remember when I first passed the bar and I went to get sworn in at Georgia Supreme Court, I met Chief Justice Fletcher, and he swore me in. And he looked at me and he said, son, you're going to be a prosecutor. Don't let the Court of Appeals be your eraser. And what I took that from him to mean is that you have a bigger responsibility as a prosecutor. Your job is to do justice. Your job is not to win, but to do justice. And whatever that justice is, that's what you're supposed to do in a case. And you shouldn't push the envelope just because you can, because that will result in injustice and you would be reversed. So I always took that very seriously as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. One of the things I want to make sure that I do is that I do right by the system, because being a lawyer is a privilege, and is a privilege that I take seriously, and I take being able to practice in the court serious. So I try to govern myself in an ethical fashion.
I would think a little bit, it's almost like being a doctor in a way, right? Because a doctor has to life and death situations sometimes. And being an attorney, you're making choices that, in a way, will affect someone's life that way.
Huge. Right? The three original professions, medicine, religion, and law, all have that very weighty sort of, you have to walk a certain way, and you have to walk honorably. Because you're dealing with issues with religion, you're dealing with issues of morality and issues of people's faith. Medicine, you're dealing with health of people, their survival, and in law, you're dealing with huge issues. Most people just think of criminal law and death penalty cases, but even in some of the smaller cases, you're affecting lives. The way you perform your job affects people's lives. If you don't do your job properly, you could have a kid that has a shoplifting, and you just think, oh, well, it's just a shoplifting. You mess up. Well, that gets a kid in the system, and now they're in the system. And say, for instance, they just get probation, but they're, get in a car with a friend, and that friend has something they shouldn't have. Right. And now that kid that just had probation, that probably shouldn't have been in the system if you would have done your job properly. Right. Now that kid is going to prison because he violated his probation. And now that kid is in prison. And let's say you have a kid that grew up in a decent neighborhood like Peachtree Corners. And now that kid is in prison and dealing with all of the things that are associated with prison, and they come out, they're changed. They're not the same person that they were when they went in.
I would think not.
Right. So that's how I look at every case. I look at every case as, this is somebody's life, no matter what the charge is. And I want to do my job to the point that I've done everything I can to make sure that I'm representing this person in a positive manner.
We talked about this before a little bit, that being an attorney in a court of law is not like L.A. law. Right?
No.
It's nowhere near that. So people, I think, they look at that, CSI and all that, and why can't you just do it this way? You got DNA and stuff. But it's a lot more involved than that, prosecuting a case or even defending the case, because maybe you don't have the same staff that a prosecutor might have, right?
Yeah, you don't. And part of my practice is representing indigent people. I represent a lot of people who can't afford a lawyer. And I'm appointed by Superior Court judges to represent them. And a lot of times you're really starting behind the eight ball, because you have a client, a lot of times they don't have a lot of education. They can't help you with the case. They don't have a support system. So you have to really sort of be, in a lot of ways, like a family member to them. You got to, talk to them and try to get to know them. And then you have to go about, getting ready for the case, reviewing the files, trying to find witnesses.
You have
sometimes
to do some of the detective work yourself.
You have to, right? There's a lot of times I've been 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night going knocking on doors trying to find witnesses. There are a lot of times on Saturdays and Sundays I'm out there, trying to find witnesses, trying to talk to people, trying to find leads for my clients, trying to talk to witnesses for the state. So you're involved. You're really trying to do everything you can for the client. But the thing about it is, I wouldn't change it. I mean, because I love my work. I love being a lawyer. Both as a prosecutor, when I had an opportunity to be a prosecutor, talking with people who've been victims of crime and walking them through the process. One of my first cases I had as a prosecutor was a child case, a child dealt with child sexual abuse. Okay. And the victim of the case was 8-year-old. And at the time of all the abuse, she was 6. And it was tough because I had just gotten my bar card. And I had just become a lawyer, and I had all this spit and fire. I'm going to be this, this great lawyer, litigator. You see the things on TV. Yeah. And I sat and I talked to this little girl, and it just crushed me. I mean, the things she went through. And it was like, how do I protect her? And it was thinking in terms of...
And could you protect her?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was like, how do I protect the rest of her future? Because her past was so bad. But how do I protect her going forward? And one of the things, we had a great victim witness advocate. We sat and talked, and we were, we really had to think about what was the best outcome for her. Was a trial the best outcome for her having to relive that in front of 12 strangers? And we agonized over it, and we talked about it, and we talked with her grandparents, because her grandparents got custody of her, and we talked with her, and we could kind of tell she was super brave, great kid, super brave, but you could kind of tell she really didn't want to get on that stand. She really didn't want to have to get up there and relive it. Sure. Yeah. And and her grandparents had done such a great job in terms of kind of getting her past that. She went to therapy, and you could see the light back in her eyes. You could see the imagination come back to her. You could see she was getting some of that innocence back, not all of it because of what she went through, but she was getting it back. And it was like, do you put her through a trial and risk losing that?
Well, that's the problem, right?
Right, and that's what we... And,
do you victimize them again?
Right. So we were able to work out a resolution without her having to go to trial, and her grandparents were on board with it, and she was happy with it, and we put the guy away for a good long time, but it prevented her from having to go through that.
Yeah, that's a tough thing. As a prosecutor, like you said, like we were discussing earlier, you have so much power to be able to decide how to prosecute, the weight of the prosecution, how are you going to, do you move forward on murder, manslaughter, or whatever. Yeah. That's a lot of power to be able to have as a prosecutor to a degree, right? It
is. And one of the things, like, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and when I talk to young prosecutors, I mean, I don't have this adversarial role where I'm like, I would never talk to a prosecutor, or I hate all prosecutors. And you have some defense attorneys that take it to that extreme. That's not me. But when, I've been practicing for 15 years, and when I meet a new prosecutor, I say, hey, look, you got to remember, your job is to do justice, not to win. And whatever justice is, that's what you have to do. Because the power of a prosecutor is huge. I mean, they can charge up or they can charge down. They can give a recommendation where, the person takes accountability, but they don't get everything that they could get if they go to trial. So the job of a prosecutor is huge, and they have a lot of responsibilities. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to run for judge is because I want to be a judge that, make sure that everybody's treated fairly, that everybody's getting a fair shake, and that the evidence is being weighed properly, and people are, getting their day in court.
Now, how did you feel about, you're prosecuting, you're in Gwinnett County, you're dealing with, currently you're a defense attorney.
Yes, yeah.
So you're dealing with the court system to begin with now.
Yes.
Not to, say good or bad about the court system the way Gwinnett County is right now, but if you were to be a judge isn't just sitting on that court, right? Judge is can be doing other things. Judge does some administrative stuff, they direct certain things. What do you see a judge, a Gwinnett Superior Court judge, with Wesley Person there? What do you see that as?
Well, I think you will see a courtroom that will allow lawyers to try their cases. One of the things that and this is not anything that happened in Gwinnett County, but one of the things I've practiced all over in a lot of different counties is when a judge inserts themselves into the court, into the trial. They, will cut lawyers off from arguments that are proper. They will try to rush lawyers along, because they want to get a case litigated in a certain amount of time. I want to, number one, have a litigator-friendly courtroom where people get to make their arguments as long as their arguments are sound and based on the law. I also want to, a lot of times, we, especially when you are in private practice, you have a lot of courts that you have to be at. If you have a decent enough practice, you don't know where you're going to be at on a Monday. Mm-hmm. You could be in Fulton County, you could be in DeKalb County, you could be in Clayton County, and have to be at every one of them all at once. What I would like to do is manage the trial docket so lawyers can they don't have to come in and make their announcements. They could do it via email, electronically, so they can say, Judge, we're ready.
FaceTime.
Exactly, FaceTime. Doing things to integrate technology into the courtroom.
That would make sense. You would maximize the way you're using the system at that point.
Exactly, especially in where I find people more frustrated. It's not in the criminal area, but family law. Because a lot of times you have a family court motion day, and you'll have 15 parties up there. And they're all sitting there waiting for their turn. And a lot of times, and in family law cases, these are retained attorneys. There's no public defender system for family law. You got to hire your own lawyer, or you go in there without a lawyer, or you may be able to get some form of legal aid. But if you can't afford a lawyer, you go in there and represent yourself. Okay. So a lot of times people are paying their attorneys $300 and $400 an hour just to sit there, waiting for their case to be called.
That's ridiculous.
It is. So I've talked to family court lawyers or family lawyers, and I said, hey, what if we had a system where you can video conference in, and your client can video a FaceTime conference in, and we can have the court reporter in my office taking this down, but you're at your office, your client is at home or at work, wherever they need to be. They take an hour out of their day to come in, and we do these teleconferencing, and we get that issue resolved. If it's an issue of custody or visitation or whatever is not going on, we can have testimony. That testimony can be recorded. We can have the lawyers make their presentation. We can have the witnesses make their testimony. And then a ruling could be made without people having to travel from their jobs or, getting childcare for their kids to come to the court to sit. And these things can be scheduled at a time that is appropriate, and it could be even scheduled. I mean, I'm game for doing it in the evenings if the lawyers are agreeable to it, because I work. I mean, I'm a small business guy. If I don't bring it in, I can't eat it. So I have to be working, past 5 o'clock.
See, if you were in New York, the unions would stop you from doing that.
Well, I mean, they probably would. But I mean, if it's something that, and it's clearly voluntary. It's not something I'm going to go, you have to do that.
No,
but if the lawyers are like, hey, Judge, we can do that teleconferencing at 6 o'clock. And if, they pay the court reporter for his or her time, and I'm sitting in the chambers. There's no need for deputies. There's no need for anybody other than me and that court reporter and a computer screen, and we take the testimony and we get it done.
Let me ask you something. Because I'm a little ignorant about this part, maybe, so we'll educate the public a little bit.
Okay.
These types of cases, they're in the court system.
Mm-hmm.
The public, right?
Right.
Anyone can walk in and
listen
and be done. Taking it in a different level taking it on a teleconference basis sort of takes it out of the public realm, you would think. But that video and that stuff could be available even online for anyone that chooses to want to know what went on with a certain case.
And you make a good point. I know the courts have to be open. It's whether or not in this particular way, if it's a hearing on a sensitive matter, sometimes you can close the courtroom.
And that's different, right?
That's different. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about criminal cases. I'm talking about family law cases. Mm-hmm. And here again, it may be something that I can't do, but it's something I'm thinking about, and it's saying, why can't we do that? To be able to alleviate this backlog.
And I like that. I like the forward thinking of that.
Right.
Because there are plenty of software out there now that businesses use for teleconferencing, for scheduling. There's no reason why a court system, wasn't it $75 million to expand the court?
Yes.
At the beginning of the year?
Yes.
I just saw that article. $75 million to expand the court system in Gwinnett County. And you would think that's fine. That's buildings and stuff. We need we're a growing county. We need that room, that's flexibility. But to be able to then to digitize some of that, to be able to do some of that would help them alleviate so much that they don't even need more expansion later.
Exactly. And if you can get these, I don't want to say minor issues, but if you can get these hearings and where the parties are having disputes over what time the child has to be back or something like that, then you have time to deal with the big cases. You have time to deal with the divorces where they're contested and we're dealing with property issues and things like that. Mm-hmm. Be able to get them moved quicker so you can get some resolution. Mm-hmm. The same with criminal cases. There's no reason why, and this is me thinking, and somebody may say, well, you can't do this, Wes. And if you can't, then you can't. But, if the parties are agreeable, have Saturday courts at the jail where you have people in custody and have these hearings where the jail is open, have these hearings in the holding rooms in the jail where you can get motion to suppress statements. A lot of those things dealt with on a weekend or something like that where attorneys who people will be surprised. There are very few attorneys that are actually trying cases. And usually they're trying cases at a lot of different places. So it's hard to get them pegged in, especially with your drug cases. Because you have certain lawyers that's their expertise. These large wiretap cases where you have a terabyte worth of evidence because you have you have all these phone conversations, you have all this, and you have to have these motions with multiple defendants. And a lot of times it's hard to schedule those. And I've talked to some of my colleagues and I was like, look, would you be opposed to doing a Saturday? And they're like, no, that would be great. I'm in the office anyway on a Saturday. So it would just be, getting that worked out with, the DA's office may go, no, we don't want to do it. And then, you can't do it. But the whole idea of trying to do something new, to try to innovate, to try to pull this system into 2018, so that we can use technology to alleviate a lot of the backlog. My thing is, I think a lot of things don't get done because people just don't want to take the effort to do it because we're comfortable in this. Yeah. I don't want to be comfortable in it. I want to be able to try to do things differently, to bring technology in as much as possible so that we can have an efficient, effective court system where we don't have cases. Literally, we have some cases that are, 5 years old.
And there's really no reason, right?
Well, a lot of it is scheduling. A lot of it is we don't have the court space. But some of it is because we don't try to do things to try to fix certain things to make that scheduling possible. Mm-hmm. One of the judges that I look to as a great example, and I'm going to say this on the record. When he first came about and he tried to do it, I was resistant. I was like, "Oh man, this is not how we do it." Because that's how we are.
How we do it.
Right. As human beings, we get into a certain thing and we want to always keep it that way. We're resistant to change. That's just how we are.
You're right.
But Judge Rich, he came in and he did a lot of arraignments via tele arrangements where the defendant, if they were in custody, they stayed in the jail and they did their arrangement via video phone. Okay. And they weren't transported over. And he did calendar calls where attorneys would just email their announcements and he would do motions that way too. And I was like, oh, this is just crazy. What is he doing? He's messing up the system.
This is not what I'm used to.
Right. But what I saw is his caseload started getting smaller. He was reducing his caseloads. Cases were getting moved. We weren't, spending money on transporting inmates from the jail to the courthouse just for an attorney to say, not ready or ready.
Efficiencies.
Exactly. Right. And that's the thing that I think, we could do more of.
And most people don't understand that judges can do that, right? I mean, you're in charge of the court system essentially. There's no one above you like that. You're running the system essentially.
Correct. You manage your courtroom,
right?
And I think that's an excellent way to manage your courtroom. I look at how Judge Rich does it, and is efficient. It saves the taxpayers money because you don't have to transport them. Transporting inmates over is a very sensitive thing. You got to have a lot of security, a lot of manpower, and then transporting them back up.
Right.
And then having the deputies in the courtroom, having the deputies having to manage the inmates in the holding cell. That's a lot of money. And multiply that, twice a month. Times 12 months. So that comes up to the real money, as people used to say.
Real money.
Yeah. So
that's true.
That's the type of thing. And even, with the idea of, handling certain family court matters in a certain way, that's money that a person doesn't have to pay their lawyer. They pay them $300 for the hour. They don't have to pay them 300 times 5 hours for them sitting in the courtroom. And a lot of times, and then they don't get a chance to get heard because, parties will, I don't know if you've ever been in a courtroom, but what the judge will do, he'll call the calendar if the case is there. And he'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Smith versus Smith. Right. Counsel A, how long do you think it'll take to hear this? And that counsel say 30 minutes. Counsel B, how long? Yeah, Judge, I think it'll take 30 minutes. Okay, you're first. Well, Smith and Smith gets up there, all of a sudden, bam. What was going to take 30 minutes is now an hour and a half. Now you're pushed back an hour, and you're trying to make that time up. And it's only and you got to take a lunch break because you got to let your court reporter take a break. Right. You got to let the deputies who are in the courtroom staffing it take a break. The lawyers, they're human. They want to call their officer. So now you take that hour lunch break or 5-minute lunch break, and now you're coming back. And the lawyers that are sitting there, they got other places they have to be. They got other courtrooms calling them. They have clients that are coming in. Their office is, ringing them. The client that's sitting there is like looking at their watch and looking at their wallet. And not only are they paying someone, but they're not at work earning money. Yeah. Or they're having to pay for a sitter or daycare. And so it just becomes frustrating. And then what it does is it creates that pressure, and then people just start, hey, let's just get this over with. And they they settle the case, and they may not settle it for what it's worth, but they settle it just to get it over with, just to kind of, I don't have to pay this lawyer another $1,500 for this hearing.
And sometimes that's what you want to do. Sometimes that's what you can only afford.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I can see that. This is worse than sometimes the airports when they get backed up, or a doctor's office when they get backed up. So you can be sitting there, you just come in there, there's no one there, but there's still people waiting in the...
Exactly. Yeah. So I think there's a way in doing it, and scheduling these things, because in federal court, if you go to federal court is extremely efficient. Now, their docket is not as big as state court, but it's still some best practices that can be used to try to get these things moving. I think on the criminal side, A lot of times court cases are kind of backed up because motions are not filed in a certain time, discovery's not turned over, new discovery is turned over, and that pushes it back. I've been in a lot of circuits where the judge will do a standing order for all parties in a criminal case. That means the state has to turn over discovery at a certain date. The defense has to file their motions at a certain date. If they're not filed at that date, then it's kind of you don't. Yeah, so be it. You didn't file it. And then trial dates are made at a certain date. These cases will come. And if you give people, and what I've seen, if you give people those dates and you hold firm to those dates, they're going to do it.
Right.
Because they understand these are the rules. And they're gonna sort of conform to them. Now, are there times that you have to sort of step back from that because of the state may have gotten some late discovery they didn't know about? Yeah, you're gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to
but
use discernment.
Those are reasonable.
Those are reasonable,
exceptions.
Right? That shouldn't be the rule. It should be the exception. Right. Shouldn't be the rule. But if you hold people to that standard, like, okay, counsel, this case is arraigned. Discovery will be turned over. Like, what's today? May 4th.
3rd.
May 3rd. Okay, so you're arraigned on May 3rd.
Right.
The state, you will have discovery to the defendant no later than May 20th. And Mr. Defense Counsel, you have to file your motions in this case by June 30th.
And if you hold to that.
If you hold to it, yeah.
Then they're going to be used to it.
Exactly.
But if you give exceptions every other time.
Then they're not.
Right.
And you have to
so you have to have a tough court.
You have to, and most lawyers, they're going to say, okay. Lawyers just want consistency.
Yeah.
That's the thing they want. They want, if a judge is consistent,
right, they're
great with it. Whether that judge is consistently right or consistently wrong, because they can then navigate it. It's like if you know the rules of the road, you can navigate it. It's when it becomes mercurial, when it becomes ever changing, when it, goes from this to that, that's where they can't.
Well, you have some attorneys that take advantage and is going to want that motion to keep pushing it out, where other attorneys might I have my stuff together. We need to do it now. And, I can see that.
Right.
I can see that.
And that's the thing. And, when I was a prosecutor, we had some tough judges in the Griffin Judicial Circuit. I mean, they were legendary tough judges.
Really?
Yes. Quintessential hanging judge. They were just basically like that. And it was great as a prosecutor coming up under them because they were tough. I mean, they would shoot you down in a minute. So you had to have your stuff together. So
made you a better attorney.
Exactly. But the thing about it was consistent. Like, you knew you couldn't go to this judge with this type of plea because he wasn't going to take it. So you knew the rule. You knew if you had a burglary, that judge wasn't taking anything less than 3 years if it was the first burglary. You knew it. The defense counsel knew it. So it was no sort of, hey, can you give me 2 years on this? It was just like, you knew. Right. So, and the thing is you're better able to communicate to your client or to the person, hey, I've been before this judge. I kind of know how they are. They're not gonna stray from the law. They're not gonna stray from the facts. It's not gonna be you catch them on a good day on Wednesday. They're going to ignore what they did on Tuesday.
Right.
No, it's like they're consistent. And I think the parties, that's what they want. I mean, the law has to be, consistent. Yeah. There's a reason why we look at precedents, because we want to make sure that we have that line that people can understand. When the law gets all crazy and you get, one of the things I sort of hate about today's climate is this whole idea of forum shopping. Like,
what is that?
Well, forum shopping is where you go to a particular circuit or area where you'll get a ruling. It's done in federal courts a lot.
Okay.
Classic example is right now we have a Republican president. If you have a liberal or Democratic viewpoint and you want to attack that president's policies, you'll file a suit in the Ninth Circuit. Sure. Because the Ninth Circuit tends to be a little more liberal.
Right.
8 years ago, we had a Democratic president. Mm-hmm. If you were conservative and you didn't like his policies, you would file it in the Fifth Circuit, Texas, because they were conservative and would more likely rule against his principle. Here's the thing. The law is the law. Why is that something that you can do? That undermines our faith in the system. Because if you can just go to one judge and get a ruling that you would get different from another judge, the same thing, the same facts, same law.
Right.
It shouldn't be. It should be, if it's the same facts, the same law, the same precedents, it should be the same ruling. Doesn't matter. Shouldn't matter if that judge was appointed by a Democrat or that judge was appointed by a Republican. If this is the precedent,
right,
then it should go by that.
So we're talking, if it's the rule of law, that's where that phrase comes from, right?
It's exactly.
To be able to do that.
Exactly.
There's no interpretation.
I mean, the interpretation is the case law. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you have the facts are the same, we like to say on all fours. Mm-hmm. If the facts are the same, there's nothing distinguishable about it. And the Georgia Supreme Court ruled that this should be the outcome based on these facts. As a trial judge, that's my ruling. Okay. My ruling shouldn't be, oh, well, you know what? I don't like the way the Georgia Supreme Court came up with that decision. I think they were kind of wacky. Yeah. So I'm just going to do my own thing. That undermines the faith in the law, because then you have judges making decisions based on their own personal preference.
Yeah, and I can see that ended up, that type of case would end up going back to the to the district court again.
It will go back up to go to the Georgia Court of Appeals. They'll look at it and they'll say, Judge Person, we have 150 years of precedence. Mm-hmm. There's nothing distinguishable about this case. There are no facts that are different. Right. There's nothing unique about this. There's no reason whatsoever why you should have made that ruling. We're kicking it back to you.
Let me ask you something. The obviously you're running like other candidates are running for a judgeship. Mm-hmm. So you have prosecutors, you have defenders, both sides, and some people that have done prosecution and defending.
I'm the only one. In my race, I'm the only person that has been both a prosecutor and a defense attorney. In my race, I'm the only person that has represented people in family law cases. Mm-hmm. In my race, I'm the only person that has been both a juvenile prosecutor and a juvenile defender. Okay. I've handled civil litigations, personal injury, and I've been a lawyer for 15 years. I've had cases that judges have literally called me to their court for me to represent that person because they felt like I'm going to do a good job for that person and it's a difficult case. And they want to make sure that it's done right so it won't come back on appeal, at least not for any kind of ineffective assistance of counsel. So
that's pretty good.
In this race, Division 2, I'm the only one that has been both a prosecutor and a defense attorney and done civil work also.
I got to believe that sort of would inform the way you would be a judge on that bench.
It does, because I understand how important it is to get that decision right, both for the state and for the defense. Because if you get that decision right, if you do the right thing, if you make the right decision and you explain it, and that's something that people sometimes don't do. If you explain that decision, Mr. Defendant, this is why I'm denying your motion. The case law says X. The facts say this. The case law aligns with the facts for me to rule to deny your motion. I've been in that courtroom. I've been with defendants that have heard it that way, and 9 times out of 10, that defendant will go, okay, I don't like his ruling, but I understand it. And they can accept it. They feel like they've been heard. They feel like they've had an adequate chance to make their argument, that the judge listened and the judge took those factors into play, but then the judge said, hey, it just doesn't mesh out.
Do you not find that the case Do you not find that being the case? Do they not explain their decisions?
There have been, not in Gwinnett County. I mean, Gwinnett County judges have been good, but in a lot of places they haven't. They haven't explained that decision, and it makes it difficult to explain to your client why that ruling is just, because they feel like they've been treated unfairly.
Yeah, I would only think it's fair if they were told why.
Right.
The decision's made a certain way.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm just, as just a common man, not a lawyer, not having that background, I would think that would be normal, that they should do that.
I mean, let's take it back to how we deal with our children. When we say to our children, because I say so, I mean, they have a hard time grasping that. They want to know, but why? But why? But why?
Right. The good parent never says, just because I say
exactly.
so.
And that shouldn't be what a good judge should do. A good judge should explain to the parties, this is why I'm ruling this way. And allow the parties to make their arguments. One of the things that kind of disappointed me one time, I had a colleague that was going in for a bond hearing. And I was like, what are you here for? He's like, for a bond denial hearing. I was like, wait, has anybody testified? Mm-hmm. And he just knew his bond was going to be denied. I think now he may have had reasons why, factors or anything like that, but he didn't kind of lead me to that. He didn't say, well, Wes, because my client has a record a mile long or that. I mean, he just kind of knew he wasn't getting a bond from the judge, regardless. And he was kind of resigned to that fact. I think that's bad. And another thing, judges, we get to sentence people. And I know in this race there's been a lot of discussion about strong bench and holding people accountable. Here's the thing, and I always tell people this. If someone hurts a child, they physically abuse them, sexually abuse them, and they're found guilty by a jury, they're going to jail.
Right.
They're going to jail for a long time. Not just because I feel like they should, but because our laws mandate sentencing. If you commit child molestation and you're convicted, it's a 5-year minimum. The judge can't give you below that.
Okay.
If you commit what is called aggravated sexual battery or aggravated child sodomy or aggravated child molestation, that's 25 years to life. The judge can't give you less than 25. If you commit an armed robbery in this county and you're convicted the first time, it's a 10-year minimum, 20 and then life. The judge can't go below 10 years. So when people talk about, I'm going to sentence people harshly, we all are, because it's the law.
Right.
So no one's
that's probably because not enough people understand that.
Right.
And you have to educate. Not only are you running for the seat, but you have to run and educate people why you're running for that seat, what makes a difference, and why, when someone says that about we need to be harder, tougher on crime, it's the same thing in New York when we used to hear the same stuff over and over again. Republicans would say one thing, Democrats would say, and it's like you have minimum years, you have certain things.
Yeah,
you're running. It's all like I won't say what it is, but it's all like really.
But here's the difference, and I tell people: if you want a judge to just automatically give sentences after sentence and jail. Then you need to just have a robot.
Yeah,
I mean,
right? Could be AI driven.
Exactly. I believe a judge should have. They should have discernment and look. There's some people that need to go to prison for their first offense because they have no remorse. They're not going to change. They're trying to game the system, and they need to go to prison. But there are some people. And these are for crimes that are not mandatory minimums. But there's some people that you take all the facts in, because that's what you should do as a judge. Take in all the facts when you're sentencing a person. Hear everything. And then you make a decision. You look at it and you use your years of experience as a person. Right. You look that person in the eye and you get a feeling. I mean, it sounds kind of maybe, I don't know, but no, that's what, I
think you're right.
Yeah, I think you have people up there to discern. You don't have people to automatically go, bam, like assembly line justice. That doesn't work.
It's funny. People are, you're willing to listen. You go to church, you learn about Solomon, right? He was a judge. He was a king, but he was judging, and he made judgments. And we praise that. that there's someone that could do that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was Solomon. Maybe us plain common folk are not quite Solomon-ish, but
that's what you.
But isn't that what that's about?
That is my prayer. I think it's 1 Kings 3, where Solomon asked God to give him discernment, because my people, your people, are great. They're vast in number, and I am yet a child. But I need your discernment. That is my prayer. That is my passion, that I have that discernment. And here's the thing. I'm going to say, will I get it right all the time? It's impossible. I'm not a deity. I'm a human person. I'm an imperfect being trying to do a perfect work. And sometimes I'm going to miss it. But I'll learn from that and not miss it again. And I understand people's like, well, if you miss it, somebody may die. I mean, if I had a crystal ball, if I had a way of looking and predicting the future, I wouldn't be running for judge. I'll be a hedge fund manager and be like Bobby Axelrod on Billions and be wealthy out of my mind. But this is and what I tell people is, it's not a perfect process, but I will do everything in my power every day to make decisions that will be beneficial to Gwinnett, that'll make it a safer, stronger, but also a beloved community. A community where we have respect for each other, where we have the common decency for each other, and where we feel that we have a community. Because that's a lot of what, and people are like, well, how can a judge do that? Well, I think it starts off by how the tone that person sets in the court. Is everyone being treated with the dignity and respect that it deserves, regardless of their status, regardless if they're a wealthy person or they're a laborer? It's that they're being treated with that respect and dignity, that they come to the court and they know that that person sitting on the bench is not going to look at their status, but they're going to look at what's the law and the facts. And it doesn't matter who you are. You could be a billionaire, and it could be the janitor that works for that billionaire. But if the law and the facts are on that janitor's side, doesn't matter. Does not matter. And that's the type of judge I want to be. Whoever comes in that courtroom, I'm going to make a decision based on those two things. I'm not going to make a decision on what your party affiliation is, what your race, what your creed, what your gender, what your sexual orientation is, whether you're a police officer, whether you're, the guy standing on the corner. Everyone's going to be treated with the same dignity and respect, and those scales of justice are only going to move based on the law and the facts, and that's it.
Well said. That's a lot. We went from Solomon to.
I know this is we've been kind of. But it's
worked
been
up a little bit there.
No, I get passionate about this because
this is good.
Because the court system. Here's the thing. I know we have 3 branches of government. We have the executive and legislature. But what I tell people about the judicial branch, this is the only branch of government that you see the person you elected make the decision. You don't see a staff member. You don't see an assistant mayor. You see that person you pulled that lever for. That person is making a pronouncement on your case. That is extraordinary.
So the question begs then, it's the system we have, right? You run in a nonpartisan race.
Right.
You can't declare, Republican, Democrat. I forget who I was talking to about that. Actually, he wasn't running for judge. He was running for some state seat, I guess. And he didn't want to. It was a special election. He didn't want to declare whether he was Republican or Democrat. And I said, after 45 minutes of talking to you, I think everyone would assume you're a Republican based on what you've said. So let's just be clear and honest. It's okay. Come forward. But running for a judgeship, it's tough. I can imagine. You get asked all sorts of questions. You have to be careful in your fundraising. You have to be careful in your campaigning.
Yes.
And how long is the term?
It's a 4-year term. So this term would end in 2022.
Probably.
Yeah.
So
my math is bad.
So 1822.
Yeah.
But you have to run again.
Yes.
And there's not a natural, listen, in some places, elected officials, I come from a place where sometimes you look where the money comes from and stuff, and you could say, well, there's a natural constituent that wants to give money to them because they're going to vote a certain way.
Right.
You don't do that as a judge, especially in a judgeship like this, where there's no constituency like that to say, I'm going to dissuade him to vote a certain way. So, but you still have to run for it. You still have to beg for the vote, if you will, which at the end of the show, I'm going to ask you to give a 2-minute thing why people should vote for you, and ask where they can find that information from you. But do you find this as a better way of doing this, than appointing someone to life on a judgeship?
I mean, that's a difficult question for me to answer because I see the virtue and the vice in both. The virtue in having a judge appointed is you don't have that judge going out and seeking money and raising money and going out and actually, doing what we're doing, campaigning. That judge can make a decision without having to worry about, okay, is somebody going to run against me in 4 years because they don't like my decision? Right. So it makes it, they don't have to worry about certain political considerations, which they shouldn't anyway. Mm-hmm. But the idea of appointing judges is you get that. The vice in that is you get someone who's not accountable. So they can get up there and be tyrannical. Right. They can, be horrible, and you can't remove them but for impeachment, which is kind of a difficult thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so the benefits of having judge run is they're accountable. Mm-hmm. The bad part is you have judges out there campaigning, raising money, and it gives the appearance that judge can be brought, and that judge has to worry about making decisions because if I anger a certain political class, am I going to face, an opponent? Right. So it's one of those, the thing that I just sort of rest on is I'm just going to be the best judge I can. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to make decisions based on the law and the facts. And if someone has a problem with it, they'll run and I'll explain to the voters, well, this is why I made that decision. Just like I explained to the parties, and this law, this law and these facts calls for this decision, and explain to them the case law and everything else of why I made that decision. That I didn't make it because I just woke up and I didn't have my Wheaties that morning and I just decided, I'm just going to do this. Right. But that I thought carefully and I thought long about it. That I just didn't give a knee-jerk reaction. One of the things, and you don't know me, but one of the things that people who do know me is I'm one of those people that I like to talk things through. I don't like to come to a rash decision. I'm decisive, but I don't like making a rash decision. I really like to weigh and think about and then come to a decision. Because I want to look at everything. I was having I think it may have been the mayor of Peachtree City where they had the United Peachtree Forum. Mm-hmm. And he asked me about the Starbucks decision because I think I told him I had managed a Starbucks back in my days before.
Did you really?
I did. And I said, well, I don't know what happened prior to them coming into the store. Having been in that position, having been a manager of the store, sometimes you have a situation where something is crazy and the next person you get, you're reactive. Mm-hmm. And I don't know and I don't think what that young lady did was right, but I don't have all the evidence on why she did that. Did she have a problem person 2 minutes before those two gentlemen came in the store and she just instantly reacted and was just like, okay, I'm going to call the police. Yeah. Without factoring in, well, they're not doing the same things. They're obviously, they say they're here for somebody and they're going to order without and that's the type of thing I don't want to do as a judge. I don't want to let what happened at one case influence my decision on this case when the two are different.
For sure.
So I like to talk things out. I like to sit down and understand all sides of the argument, and then I come to a conclusion.
Sounds like what a judge should do.
I think so. Right. I think so. I think that should be. And then explain it. Because, and I keep going back to, I know people going like, why do you keep saying that? Why do you keep saying that? Because I think it's important for you to know why the decision maker made that decision.
Yeah, I think so too. Why would you you would want to know a decision on almost anything in your life, right? I mean, so
exactly.
Why not that?
And especially since you're talking to the person that the people elected, is that leader, and they have that. That's our duty. That's our obligation. Yeah. That's what we're there for. I mean, the whole idea, like we had referenced Solomon, but I'm thinking about, I think it's Exodus, where Moses' father-in-law kind of said, "Well, what are you doing? You're sitting up here doing all these things." And he was like, "Well, the people, I'm their leader. I have to make the decisions." And he was like, "Well, you can delegate that." And it sort of the idea to me is that, people want their leaders to make a decision. They want to know why, and they're fine with it as long as they can understand it. Where they just don't feel like it's just made up or just,
the interesting part to me is that we elect politicians that in the last 2, 3, 4 years, good or bad, for a long time now, none of them can seem to make a decision. So we have Congress that can't decide on things. And so I'm going to make a political statement maybe, but
okay.
And this is why you're not saying anything, but this is why we elected Trump, right? Because people wanted to shake things up, right? I don't say we because I didn't vote for Trump, but I can understand why people voted for Trump. I can understand the idea is that we want we're electing people. We want decisions to be made. And a judge has to make a decision every day. A regular politician, a senator, a congressman, a state senator, they're not making those decisions every day. And it's always couched in a different way, too. And when you make a bill, even though people say, well, they voted for a bill, there's Congress, there's the House, there's the Senate, there's a conference committee, there's amendments that are added later, there's a president that has to sign. It's a whole different quagmire. But a judge can't be distilled that way, right? Judge is making a decision, yay or nay,
yes,
on something every day.
And I think the whole, here's what saddens me about the whole political process, without me saying one way or another on anything. It's the lack of inspiration. It's the lack of inspiring us to be better. Yes. Inspiring us to come together. Mm-hmm. Inspiring us to make a difference. That's the thing that, and that's what, in running for this office, I don't talk about, I'll lock people up. I want to talk about how I can make it better. Mm-hmm. I don't want to fear you into voting for me. I want to inspire you to vote for me. I want you to vote for me because you believe I'm going to make a difference. And if that difference means locking someone up, then I will do that. If that difference means to create a accountability court to give a person a second chance to get their lives in order, that's what I want to do. I mean, I want to inspire people to believe again in the greatness of who we are, because I think that's lost. That's lost. A lot of this sort of what we're into is lost of how fantastic this country is. Yeah. I mean, I had an opportunity to travel, and when I got outside of the United States, it was some, I enjoyed the culture and stuff like that, but it was homogeneous. Everyone looked the same. Yeah. Everyone, but in this country, and even in this county, you have a mixture of all different cultures, religions, political viewpoints, and all that. Yeah. And it works. Mm-hmm. As much as we have these little squabbles, it works.
Most diverse county in the state.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so I want to inspire people. I want people to vote for me because they're inspired to vote for me, not because they're fearful of what will happen, but they're inspired that this guy is going to get up there and do what he says. He's going to rule based on the law and the facts, but he's going to do it in a way that makes us better. Not just safer, but better.
Well, better can be safer.
Exactly.
Right? People don't understand that. You could put people in jail all day long, but at some point they have to come out. And they have to be better for society when they come out. So if you're if you could do it in a better way, almost in a fatherly way, is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Then that person may become a better person when they come out. If if you have to put them in, at least understanding why you're there. Listen, there are always people that could take advantage of a system.
Yeah.
I don't think that the majority of people that are like that in the criminal system. My daughter just did a jail project, and she went with her class, and they did this a whole semester. They were low risk prisoners in Rome, Georgia, and it was for language class. So they read the same books. They discussed the books. And she said to me, Dad, when I went in there, I was kind of fearful. I didn't know what to expect. But as she went through the semester and got to know these people, she realized some of these people are really intelligent. They speak well. Some of them are wise and sound like they have some wisdom there. So they're not all, the boogeyman. They're not all bad people. Eventually they have to come out and be part of productive society. So having someone that can see that might make sense then.
I mean, and I hope, and that's my hope, and that's what I want to do. I mean, I've sat in holding cells with young men that have been accused of doing some very bad things. And I can tell you, in that room at that moment, they're almost like little kids. Because a lot of times is they finally have someone who's talking to them. And I'm not telling them, you did a good thing. I'm telling them you did an absolutely horrific thing. And you have to take responsibility for it. A lot of times people don't get that. People always, when they look at criminal defense attorneys, they think that, you're getting people off. A lot of times we're helping people it's almost priestly in a way. We're helping people come to grips with the decisions that they made and being able to accept the consequences of it. That's a large part of my job sometimes, because I have to sit down and I have to tell them, look, I can try this case 100 times. And I win it once. Because the evidence is, I'm not a fool. I'm not sitting there telling them, this evidence is not. I'm sitting up there because part of my job is to be a counsel. It's to be a counselor and it's to be an advocate. When I'm in the court, I'm advocating for them. When I'm outside of the court, I'm counseling. I'm saying, look, I understand you don't want to go to jail 1 minute, let alone 10 years. But you got to face the facts.
Right.
You got to face reality. And it's helping them. It's talking with them. It's explaining to them the law. It's explaining to them the facts and how that judge is going to rule, because he or she can't rule the way you want them to, because the law and the facts don't support it.
Maybe they don't even understand that sometimes.
A lot of times they don't. And you're walking them through it. Yeah. And you're getting them to now understand the reality of their actions. And then you get them to accept the consequence of it. And you do it lovingly. You have to. And a lot of clients who will accept responsibility, they will say to you, thank you. I know I got to do a considerable amount of time in jail, but I appreciate you helping me come to grips with it. And that's what I do every day. I get in court, I fight like heck for my client. When I was a prosecutor, I got in there and I fought like heck for the state. But a lot of times it's explaining to people, hey, this is going to be the outcome. And it's doing what I want to do as a judge, just from a sample, this is the law, these are the facts, and this is the outcome. It's hard to get around that, and I'm not going to get around it.
So let's do this. We've been through an hour.
Wow.
Talking. So we've discussed quite a bit. We've gone through quite a bit of your background, the way you believe in certain things. I almost feel like I'm with a preacher in a way. Especially towards the end here, we were really getting into it a little bit, Solomon and all that. But give you a 2-minute why they need to vote for you, and tell them where they can find more information.
Okay. First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to your viewers. My tagline of what I've said is, I believe that I'm a servant that you can trust. And what I want to do is serve the people of Gwinnett County. I want to serve them by making the justice system more efficient, bringing in technology to make the wait times on cases less. But I also want to do something different in terms of sentencing, not for the truly, I'm going to use the term deplorable, those people who have hurt and harmed our citizens, committed murder, armed robbery, and things of that nature. They have to be separated from society. But I'm talking about that young man or that young woman that may have committed a shoplifting, may have committed a burglary, may have committed a small-time drug sale, that we can get them in a different space, that we can get them in a program, an accountability court that can teach them good values, that can teach them skills that they had not gotten prior to that. And to walk them through an accountability court where they will have to come to the court and give an account of what they've done that week. They've gone through counseling. They tested negative on drugs. They're going to their job training. And as they walk through that step, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, they will graduate. And studies have shown that people who have completed accountability court are 60% less likely to reoffend. That means that that person will no longer be in the criminal justice system, but they'll be a productive, valued member of society, and that they will be making Gwinnett better. I believe that that will not only keep us safer, but it will make us better, that it will make us more of a beloved community. So if you believe in this vision, you can visit my website at www.electwest2018.com. That's my website. You can see information. You can get involved in the campaign. You can make a donation because, unfortunately, we have to buy ads and things of that nature. You could go canvassing with me. Or if you have a question, you can even ask. But please vote. Early voting has started. And the election will be May 22nd, and I hope I have your support because I believe I'm the only candidate that has experience on both sides. I've seen it from the state side, I've seen it from the defense side, and I understand the importance of having a judge that will make a decision based on the facts of the case and the law, and that will judge with a discerning heart. So I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Wesley. I appreciate you coming tonight and
Thank you.
Sharing information and being with me for an hour and discussing this. We're going to close out the podcast. So I just want to tell people that our sponsor has been Prototype Prime. They're an incubator here in Peachtree Corners that deals with high-tech and hardware technology. They have about 14 companies, I think, right now, little seedlings ready to grow up. And they're using the facilities to be able to 12,000 square feet of facility to be able to have open space, open work, 3D printers, podcast studio that I use also during the day on 4 or 5 times a month that they lend to us to do some of the shows. So a great place. It's just more stuff is coming out of there. They're actually going to be part of this whole autonomous vehicle testing program that's going to be going on. And we'll be having them on as well to be able to discuss a little bit of that and what that means to Technology Park, to Peachtree Corners and all that. Our upcoming guests for coming over the next few weeks is, so next week we're going to be interviewing Tracy Mason, also running for Gwinnett County Superior Court. That's on the 10th. The Ed Hour with Alan Kaplan, my co-host. We'll be discussing several subjects within the education topic. That's our monthly education podcast. And we're coming up with some special things that we want to talk about. Last show, which you can find online at PeachtreeCornersLife.com, we spoke about safety in the schools. Are our kids really safe? We'll also be having Steve Riley on the 17th that evening. He's running for congressional nomination of the Democratic Party for District 7. He's a neighbor of mine. We're going to have him over. We're going to discuss a little bit about politics and talk some issues. And then Brian Johnson, the city manager, will be with me for Prime Lunchtime at noon on the 24th. If you have questions you want to ask him, feel free to follow us. We'll be Facebook Live. Put your questions in the comments. Or I'll have a text message that you can text questions to during that hour. So there's a lot of things going on. I hope you Like our Facebook page. If you're listening to this podcast and haven't done that yet, you get notifications of Facebook Live. Feel free to go to Peachtree Corners Life. We cover a lot of the city issues. I have a writer that covers City Hall, and so a lot of things going on there. So I do want to thank again Wesley.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
This is always a cool thing to do. And
thanks for listening to Peachtree Corners Live with Rico and Rita. Check out our Facebook page. Download the Spreaker radio app for Apple, Android, and Windows devices, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at PeachtreeCornersLive.com.